This software we use these days, oh my goodness, is it getting smart? Microsoft Office has Word, Excel, PowerPoint. Oh my gosh, it's got so many different tools, and they're getting so smart and so elegant and so easy to use. Sometimes when you get into Word, though, or Excel, or even PowerPoint, sometimes that automatic, fun, cool features get in your way. You've ever been typing in Microsoft Word and all of a sudden a word changes to a different word? Or perhaps you type in an asterisk and all of a sudden it says, hey, Tom, that was a nice asterisk, but I'm going to turn it into a bullet for you. Sometimes it just gets in the way, doesn't it? And if you go out to Google and research some of the biggest problems scientists have with Microsoft Excel, and not just scientists, everybody, but it really affects the scientific community. Microsoft Excel has some automatic features as well, designed to help. And these automatic features, although designed to help, can be either annoying, they can replace your data, and even beyond annoying, to the point where you don't even realize that Microsoft Excel is actually changing your content for you without you even knowing it. And how are you going to find this out? Is it going to show up in the research? Is it going to show up in the reports? Or are you going to stumble on these mistakes? And they are truly mistakes. So instead of me quoting study after study after study saying, this is what we found, do your own research, do your own Google research, and notice how really dramatic this can be. Out of 10,000 papers with about the genome and genes and gene names, 30% of them, between 20 and 30% of these papers had incorrect gene names, not because of the input, it's because of how Excel translated the input. So we're going to discuss these things today, and we're going to discuss a lot more to help you appreciate how you can make Excel work best for you. Hi, my name is Tom, and I'm with Gravity Learning. I'm a founder at Gravity Learning, and I'm here to give you 55 minutes of Excel amazingness. Also, some not so amazing things about Excel that we can get around and make our day a bit better with our data and our analysis. Gravity Learning is based on research and science. We don't just go with the trends of what's happening right now in the way we teach and the way you learn. No, we follow jury-journaled, peer-reviewed, the humanity of it. We teach the way the humans learn. And you're going to find that our approach is wonderful. This is a shortened version of what we do regularly. It's a 2-hour workshop. This is a 55-minute workshop, but we want to give you a taste of the whole thing. The whole thing meaning not just lecture, but no, practice and doing. So I'm going to be putting exercise files into the chat, and we'd like you to use those exercise files to follow along. If you can't download the exercise files for whatever reason, you'll still be fine, because I'm going to be demonstrating everything for you today. This is a fast-paced workshop. I'm going to show you a lot, but I want you to consider what resonates with you and write it down. If you don't write it down, you're very likely to forget about it. And also, you'll receive an email at the end of this workshop thanking you for coming, and also with a couple of takeaways and reminders of what we did, and a link to this recording if you'd ever like to watch it again. I've got a special haircut just for today. So I wanted you all to think, hey, I want to go watch that video again. And sure enough, we're ready to start, friends. I'd like to introduce you to a key problem that I find extremely troublesome in Microsoft Excel as a time sucker, a time waster. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and let you take a look at one of the biggest problems I've had with Excel. I've been around Excel for many years and helping people learn, especially in the financial and scientific communities. So I'm really excited to share what I know with you. There's a problem that we all face with Excel, or any spreadsheet for that matter, especially if we've inherited that spreadsheet from someone else. It's identifying, where did this data come from? What are we looking at? You'll notice here on this simple little spreadsheet that shows the 2019 results of a study for each quarter. I don't know, without clicking, I don't know which of these are formulas, I don't know which of these are hard-coded numbers unless you click and take a look up here at the top of the screen. You can plainly see that the formula bar says, hey, Tom, that's a number. But if I go here, which I've planted this one, we've got a nice formula there, but I wouldn't know that was a formula without doing my little research. So if you go up to your formulas menu, you'll notice that there's a choice on the formulas menu called Show Formulas. There's also a keystroke for that, which would be the control and then the tilde. That's that little button right below your escape key typically. So when we choose show formulas, you'll notice straight away my document now expands, and now I see the formulas as well as the hard numbers. So it's way easier for me to identify what's going on here. Now that I've shown you one cool trick that some of you might not have known, I'd love it if you go to the chat and join me in participating in this workshop. In the chat, can you let me know? Is this a new feature for you, or you've already known this one? Is this easy? I get this one, Tom. Or do you use this feature? You're welcome, Julia, and thank you for responding. So helpful. Seen before. Thank you, Dan. You use it a ton. So that's the type of communication I'd like. So some of you are going to be encouraged, oh my gosh, use this a ton. Or others say, I've never seen it before, but others are using it. How exciting. So great. Thank you for sharing. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the show formulas, and let's look at this a little deeper. I just received this spreadsheet from someone. I really don't know what it's all about. If I were to go over here to the decline, I'm curious. Is this a cell that other cells are dependent on? And instead of looking around and poking around trying to find what links to what, you can simply double click on a formula, and you'll notice on a formula, and you'll notice right away the cells will highlight blue and a nice red, indicating that these are the two cells involved. Now that's really cool, right? But it's not quite good enough when you have a large spreadsheet that you're trying to audit, if you will. On the formula toolbar, you'll notice there's a choice over here called the formula auditing tools. Now, the formula auditing tools are really quite amazing, especially if you understand what a precedent is and a dependent. Let's go back here. This is a cell with a number in it. So obviously it's a precedent if it's going to be used in a formula. So I'm going to trace this cell's dependence, and we'll see right away that it lets me know, Tom, these are the cells that are dependent on that cell. Let's reverse that by removing the arrows, sliding down here to this cell, and you can plainly see this cell is a formula. So obviously it has precedence. So I'll click on the trace precedence, and you'll notice right away that this cell is dependent on these two cells. You click on trace precedence again, it follows it back even further. It's a powerful tool. Auditing is an easy way for you to identify what these results are coming from. What are these formulas actually feeding into or from? Once again, go to the chat. I don't want to have to keep reminding you, but I'm going to until you make it a habit. What do you think? Seen it before, done it before, use it. Auditing, what a great tool. Thank you, Samantha. Will use it. Used. Okay, great. Thank you, Anu. Used before. New to you. You like the multiple click? Yeah, it's really great. It goes back, 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 or forward, forward, forward. Let's take this one step further. If I click up here on this known formula, I know it's a formula. I'd like to know where this formula is getting its information from. Of course, I could just read the formula up top, but I'm going to choose the trace precedence, and we'll see how that goes. And you'll notice straight away, I get one arrow pointing back to this cell, and then I get an off-screen reference letting me know that this cell or this relationship is elsewhere. Now, Excel is kind of funny because if you go to this icon, you think, oh, click on that icon, something's going to happen. That icon's a visual dud. It doesn't do anything. But the line that's connecting the two is an actual hyperlink. If you double click on that line, it'll pop up and say, it's going to this cell on this sheet. And you can click it and hit go, and it'll take you right back to the range or the cell that's feeding in. Thank you for that. Wonderful. Appreciate that insight. So now we know how to work with the auditing tools. I'd like to take it one step further for you. We'll go back over here to the relationships tab, and we'll click on one of these cells, which I happen to know is a precedent for other cells. So I'll click on trace precedents, and you'll notice once again, I can trace precedents on any cell that is based. I can trace precedents based on any cell that has a formula, and I can trace dependence on any cell that is a value or a formula. Wonderful. Thanks for letting me show these things to you. And you can see, if you project out a little bit, how this can really help you with your research and your papers and your data sets, especially your huge data sets. One more fun feature I'd like to share with you. Some of those formulas can get rather complicated. And it's hard to follow sometimes the parentheses and the order of operation. You'd like to know how this result came about. Let me zoom in a bit, and I have no idea what this formula is about, but it's a formula. And I'd like to see what this formula is about by taking a trip back over to the formulas tab. And we're going to, in this case, evaluate a formula. By clicking on the formula and choosing evaluate formula, a window pops up and says, here's the formula as it is. And once I click on evaluate, you'll notice how Microsoft displays the evaluation process based on, of course, order of operation, parentheses, and the whole algebraic expression. We'll click on evaluate, and you'll notice my evaluation is happening based on what's underscored. This is what's coming up next, and this is what's next. And then finally, as a result, this is what's next, and then we wind up with the final result. And we can always restart and watch the evaluation again. What a great feature, huh? One of the tools, this is one of the tools that saved me a lot of time when I inherit spreadsheets from others. Finally, one more awesome auditing tool I'd like to share with you. We know this value here is driving this value here, and this value is coming from an external spreadsheet, specifically this spreadsheet here. When numbers change on this spreadsheet, that might affect this spreadsheet and ultimately this number. I'd like to make some changes and watch this number as it changes by using the watch window. When I use the watch window, I can add a watch for this cell. And now I can remotely watch this cell regardless of which spreadsheet I'm on. So we can see that cell currently contains 98,441.19. By changing some of these values, I can now remotely watch this value change. And this works across multiple spreadsheets, spreadsheet after spreadsheet. If you have links after links after links, you can watch as many cells as you want. Yeah, thank you for that, Samantha. Angela and everybody, Julia, appreciate your comments. Keep them coming. I learn a lot as well when we have these comments. So that's the watch window. And of course, you can use it on any cell that has a formula. Wonderful. I'm glad you're enjoying this. Let's get back to our initial problem statement we had earlier. Remember, we talked about how importing data into Excel can actually create a problem. Let me show you what this problem is. It's going to be so self-evident. Once we get into this genes CSV file, I'm going to right click on it and go on over to Notepad and take a look at this file in its raw form. This file was downloaded from the internet. We see we have some gene names here based on a certain gene set. And down here, I've got set number 10. Let's zoom in so you can see that. These are common problems for Excel, because Excel wants to interpret them, but these are actual gene names. And there's a lot more where these came from. I just picked 5 that were obvious and easy to relate to. These gene names, when imported into Microsoft Excel, get interpreted by Microsoft Excel as dates, as you can see why. Yes, even MARC1, Mark 1, gets interpreted as a date. Let's go ahead and watch that happen because, well, frankly, I want you to see the process so you can use it in your own world. And let me take that file and slap it into the chat for you in case you want to try this yourself. Feel free to. I'm going to double click on this file, which will open it up in Microsoft Excel. Most CSV files are adopted by Excel automatically. And you'll notice as soon as I opened it up, look what happened to these 5. Microsoft didn't ask me, hey, Tom, are you sure you want to do this? Nope, it just did that. Now imagine if these were down 10,000 rows into a 100,000 row CSV file, you would never know they were there. And how much might this throw off your analysis, right? So Excel did this automatically. You might be thinking, Tom, how do I get it to stop doing that automatically, right? Well, to get it to stop doing it automatically, you need to stop doing something. You need to stop just opening up an Excel file, a CSV file, and letting Excel take care of it for you. Even if you go File, Open, Excel is going to analyze the data and ask you, nope, it doesn't ask you. It doesn't ask you a thing. It just opens up the file and converts it for you, and it doesn't even let you know that it did it. So it's pretty scary. Here's the way around that, friends. The way around that is we go up to our Data tab in Microsoft Excel, and you'll notice here in the Data tab, this space over here is known as Microsoft Power Query. It doesn't say Power Query anywhere, but it is Power Query. And if you were to go to Get Data, you'll see there's an option of getting data from a text or CSV file. When I choose text or CSV file, it'll then open up that file for me in a special editor called Power Query. Now, the Power Query editor will automatically load in the data. I have to remember where my file is. I can't talk and click at the same time. There's my file. There's the gene file, same one as before. We'll go ahead and hit import. And I'd like you to notice what happens when it imports it into a dialog box and says, Tom, what do you want to do with this data? While this is working here, let me share with you a couple things. Microsoft Power Query, which is what you're looking at here, is a tool that's capable of importing hundreds of thousands, millions of rows. I've actually got tired of waiting, but I was actually able to import over 15 million records once, and I didn't try to do any more than that. 15 million rows, way more than Excel's capability of 1,048,576. So what you're looking at right here is Power Query, capable of bringing in millions and millions and millions of rows, way above Excel's capabilities. But nonetheless, we also have this import tool, which when I choose Load, as a small down arrow, you'll notice there's a choice called Load, which means load it to the spreadsheet. Or I can choose Load To and load it to what is known as the document data model. Now, the data model is not necessary right now because this is just a few records, 15 records or so. But if you're importing hundreds of millions of rows, you'll want to load it to the data model. We'll actually show that later on in this session if we have time. I'd love to share it with you. So I'm going to go ahead and just choose Load. And you'll notice it's going to load the data into my spreadsheet. And straight away, you can see Microsoft Excel did not interpret the data at all. There we have it. Now, you might be also thinking, Tom, what about copy paste? Doesn't copy paste work? Yes, copy paste will work beautifully as well, with one problem. If you get these super large data sets, copy and paste might not work, because your computer is going to have certain limits in memory. So hundreds of millions of rows, even a couple million rows, copying and pasting isn't going to be your best bet. So we choose from the data menu as way of review. We get data from a file, and then we can bring in that file through the editor so that it doesn't get interpreted on the way. So let's go ahead and ask this question next. Have you learned anything new yet about importing data? And if so, take to the chat and let me know what it is. And if not, let me know that as well. What do you got going on? Anything going on new? Oh, Dan says that last one was new. Good. When you bring it in through Power Query, yes, it does come over as a table. You can convert it back to a range if you'd like, though. Beautiful. Please ask the questions. We've got an expert on the line, Josh. You probably saw him, that can answer questions if I don't get to it. So you might be thinking now, Tom, I'd like to split these up. Can I use text to columns to split these up? And the answer is yes, you can use text to columns. But here's the problem with text to columns. We're not paying attention. If we choose comma, a lot of us will go right away to finish, and you'll see, yeah, it does indeed separate those into columns beautifully, except for, once again, it's trying to convert these into dates. We don't want that. I'm going to do an undo. And instead, we're going to use text to columns in a more appropriate way. We'll choose text to columns after selecting our range. We'll choose our delimiter of a comma. And now at this point, the next and last step of the process is we get to select the columns and tell it how to how to interpret these columns. And I'm telling it to interpret them as text. I could click on all of them just to be safe, but for right now, I'll just click on finish. And you'll notice the first three that I selected to import as text did just that. And the other two remain being interpreted by Microsoft Excel. Thank you, Samantha. Very good. So friends, we have now spent a little bit of time talking about how to get your data into Excel effectively and accurately. Oh, here they come, popping back in. I hope you had a good conversation.
Bye.
Welcome back, everybody. Always nice to see the smiling faces. Isn't it nice to talk about what you've learned? Our 180% model of learning, better learning through interaction and engagement shows that when you talk about someone, talk about something that you've just learned with someone, you're more likely, 33% more likely to remember it and use it later. Amazing, right? So you just gave yourself a 33% boost on whether or not you'll use what you just learned. So I'd like to just spend 1 minute and reach out to just one of you and ask you, how about if we reach out to Richard, picking on Richard, what did you hear in your breakout room? What did you notice? Anything specific that you'd like to share with us? And if not, just let us know. You'll pass. That's fine. What do you think, Richard?
Sorry, I was muted. I just wanted to highlight.
All right. How about anybody else? Did you would like to share what you noticed in your breakout room? Any observations that you had?
I think I heard Richard start talking. He was on mute.
Sorry, I was muted. I just unmuted myself.
Richard, I see you talking, Richard. I just don't hear you. I apologize.
Go ahead, Richard.
No problem. I just wanted to highlight the show formula feature and how that could be useful for a whole bunch of different.
Great. Sorry, Richard, I couldn't hear you. My volume had shut off. But thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Right. Anybody else want to share?
I have something to share that might be a question. And that is with regards to the get data feature.
Mm-hmm.
Would you go about determining whether to use that or not when importing from a CSV? Do you just make that a regular part of your import or not?
That's a wonderful question. And for years and years and years, I've always disassociated my CSVs with Excel because I didn't want to be tempted to double click and have it just open it up and do its conversions. So my answer to your question is yes, it's a regular thing to go through get data and not let Excel interpret your data at all while it's coming in. You take the reins and you take control of that. In fact, we have a number of workshops, at least 5 workshops that work directly with Power Query. If you go to our website, gravitylearning.com, and go under our offerings, you'll see under the data offerings, we have a bunch of classes about Power Query that can help you transition from editing your spreadsheets, cleaning up your spreadsheets within Excel, and automating it through Power Query. And you'll find to be an amazing time saver and amazing set of tools. And thank you for sharing, Richard and Julia. Appreciate it. Let's go to the chat real quick and let me know if you're ready to learn more about some Excel great features that have to do particularly with large data sets. Ready to roll? Ready. All right, I'm going to open up another file for you. Ready? Yep. Good. I've got a great example for you next on how Microsoft Excel can help us pull data together from large data sets. Notice this one. What do you think that 2M stands for, friends? It's a CSV. 2 million records in that CSV file. 2 million records. I'm not going to double click that and try to open in Excel. I don't want to wait for Excel. Also, I know it's going to bog down and actually truncate it at 1,048,576 rows. I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to go in Excel. And Julia, that was a great question. Or was that Jennifer? You guys switched all of a sudden. So take a look at my screen, friends. Oh, there you are. Julia, it was you. I'm going to go to my data menu on this blank sheet, choose get data from a file, a CSV file specifically. And now I'm going to bring in, and you're going to have to be a little patient on this one, because I'm going to be bringing in 2 million records. And once I bring in 2 million records, you're going to be wondering, Tom, where do these records reside? Well, while I'm doing it, because it's going to take some time, these 2 million records reside in what I like to refer to as the Power Query backpack. So when you have a shirt and pants on, you've got pockets. They don't hold a whole lot. But if you put it on a backpack, you can hold a lot more and still carrying it around. And that's exactly what Microsoft Power Query is all about. So at this point, I'm not going to choose load. I'm going to choose load to, because I know there's over 1 million records in here. I'm going to load this into what is called the data model and create a connection only. I know I'm not going to transfer this to 1 million record over chat for you right now. It's like, can I have that file? No, you can't have this file. It's too big. I don't want to transfer it over to you. But you'll notice now it's loading the data, the 2 million records, into the Excel backpack called Power Query. Once this data is loaded, then I'm going to be able to do, well, what we all do when we analyze data. We'll produce our aggregates. We'll produce our pivot tables. And I'd like to demonstrate that for you as soon as it's done loading. You notice we're almost up to 500,000 already. Well, almost there. Here we come. And we're now at 400 million. And it's really fun to watch, well, because I'm a geek, 6 million, 8 million, 12 million records tick by here and load into the data model. And now I know that I'm going to be able to query this data at the speed of a database. Now, while it's loading, we're getting there. Look at you're watching, it's going to go over 1 million now. Here it goes. If you have a large data set, you've often avoided Excel. You've gone over to a database or SQL, or maybe you've taken your CSV file into MATLAB or some other tool that is capable of handling that data. And you're like, I wish I could put this in Microsoft Excel. The answer is now you can. It's been around for a long, long time. But it's finally getting the recognition that it deserves. Power Query is quite a powerful tool. And we're almost loaded. We're at 1.5 million records now. Once the records are loaded, to get to those records, you would use your queries, double click and open up the Power Query editor, and you'll be able to see those records in real time. But we're not going to go there right now. What we're going to do is we're going to, oops, it failed. What we're going to do, and I think it failed because I clicked. We're going to do that one more time, but I'm going to move into our next demonstration while it's working, because I think I accidentally hit the escape key. Give it a moment. Give it a moment. Let's see. This demonstration might be bust. Let's see. Oh, it's there. We'll just go ahead and choose close and load the model. It's broken. He's broke. All right, we'll come back to that. If I have time at the end, let me just summarize what you would have seen before it crashed. Microsoft Excel, once the data is loaded into the model, we would have created a pivot table that would have looked like any other pivot table, but we would be pivoting 2 million records easily. So fun times with Microsoft Excel. I'm going to move on to our next demonstration. In time permitting, I'll come back to the big file. I'll get it going over here on this side. Another common problem that we face as people who work with large sets of data, or even small sets of data, is remembering what in the world we have on our screen. I've got 4 data sets down here, and I need to do some math on these data sets. In fact, this data set right here is data 1, C2 through C15. I'm never going to remember that, but I'm going to need that information on this spreadsheet here for my formulas. Have any of you had this issue before where you can't remember the cell range, so you wind up clicking back and clicking forward? Well, let's introduce you to this box right here. This box is known as the name box. If I select a range of cells, even a single cell, and go to the name box, I can actually give this cell range of name, and I'm going to call this D1 costs. Hitting the enter key, which is a requirement, now renames this range as D1 costs. It's important to note, friends, that when I go to a spreadsheet anywhere on this workbook now and type in perhaps the sum of D1 costs, notice it shows up in an actual selectable item. Close the parenthesis, and now I have the sum of D1 costs. And the beauty of this, friends, the beauty of this is I don't have to remember C2 through C15. All I have to do is utilize a good naming convention that will spark my memory, D1 costs. Let's try that again. We'll go over to data 2. We'll select this range, slide on up, and we'll call this one D2 costs. And of course, I'm going to accidentally fat finger it. Oh, I put a D at the end, but I did name it. Renaming this is not as easy as coming up here and renaming that. No, because that just created a new name. To rename a range, you go to the Formulas tab and you choose the Name Manager. The Name Manager is where you can go to edit a name, point it to different cells, or even delete it. So I'm able to click on this one and actually delete that named range. And of course, once I delete a named range, it does not delete the content of the cells. It simply deletes the reference, the new name. So now we have the opportunity, the luxury, if you will, of using our named ranges in our formulas. Thoughts, especially across multiple sheets? Thank you, Josh. Thoughts about named ranges? Take to the chat, friends. Let me know what you think. Is this something you've used before? Something you think you might use? Named ranges, we'll definitely use. Thank you. Yes, it's an amazing tool. It's going to save you. Thank you, Yvonne. I like the face. And Alita's already using it. So remember, to name a range, there's a couple things that you want to keep in mind. A named range cannot start with a number or a special character and cannot contain spaces. So there's some characteristics that you have to remember about named ranges. The beautiful thing about this, friends, is a named range doesn't have to be a range. It can be just a single cell. So now your formulas will have a natural language to them, if you will. A natural language. We could say the D1 costs times the percentage, or the D1 costs times the discount. And we can use our own verbiage, our own terminology with our named ranges. You might think that, Tom, I'm going to forget my named ranges. Make sure you follow a good naming convention, but if you do forget your named ranges, you can always hit F3. The F3 function key pops up and you can choose paste list, and it will let you know in a static way, here's the named range and here's the range it's referring to. So F3 is your friend when using named ranges. There's a couple really cool new formulas that Microsoft Excel has brought forward, and I'd like to introduce you to these. Some of you in the big data world, especially the scientific world, have sheets that you have to combine all the time. And no doubt you've used copy paste to do so, or maybe even Power Query, but there's a nice relatively new function called VStack that is going to help you stack your data that's on different sheets in one long data set, making it easier for you to query and to pivot. So you notice the VStack function is asking first off, Tom, what's array 1? What's array 2? So array 1 is going to be on my data tab, this data, comma, I'll go right over to array 2, which is on my data 2 tab, this table, and you see this is building nicely up here in my formula bar. We'll do another comma, we'll go to data 3, and finally, you guessed it, I'll slide over to data 4, and notice what this lovely function called VStack does for us. It's going to take these records and pull them all together into a single stack for my next pivot table, for my next data analysis. Is that a slick tool or what? It's called VStack. It's a really easy feature, and it's dynamically linked to your tables. So if you were to add records here or change records, it's going to automatically show up in the VStack formula. Let's draw your attention to the cell here with this formula in it. That's where the cell is, that's where the formula originated. But if I go to any other cell in this array, you'll see the formula grays out, letting me know that this formula doesn't exist here. It's been copied here via an array function. And you can see if we want to edit this formula, we go to the originating cell at the top left corner. So there's your VStack. Once again, I'm interested. Yeah, keep that in mind, F3. I'm interested to see if any of you think you might use the VStack function in the future. Let me know, just a quick yes or no. Thank you. Thank you for replying. It's great. I've got a couple other really cool formulas I'd like to share with you. One of my favorites is the filter function. I mean, amazing filter function. You notice I've got this list of content over here. It's 114 rows long, and I'd like to filter it quickly and easily, but I don't want to filter the list in place. I want to create a new filtered region over here. One new tool that you might find useful is called the filter function. The filter function says, hey, Tom, what's the array? Well, the array is this range again, the whole range. And then finally, I'd like to answer the other two arguments to this function. That's the array. What am I going to include? That's my criteria. And what do I want to say if it's empty? So I'm going to tell it to look here for the criteria. And then I'm going to tell it at this point to show not found if it's empty. We'll hit the enter key, and you'll notice right now it says value because I've entered in no criteria yet. You'll see that if I said the criteria is here, I have to tell it somewhere in here to look for criteria. So this is where it gets a little tricky. At this point, I would tell it to look here. Let's go with the region, because I think I remember the region, where the region, same length as the data set, equals cell G2. And now let's observe the results. Not found, but if I type in Montana, it's going to come back and say, here's all the Montana. If I type in, let me see what's SE. I don't think that's an actual region. Can you make that dynamic by selecting columns A through E rather than arrange to a certain row? Dan, let's talk about that later. Stick around after the session. Josh might have an answer for you, but I don't have a quick answer for you. So stick around after the session and remind me, I'll go over it again with you. So that's the filter function. Pretty slick, huh? Do any of you, again, I keep asking, I love knowing what you're thinking. Go to the chat and let me know if this is something that you might use. And let me take this formula and put it into the chat for you as a reminder. And also, good, there you go. I'll give you this file as well in just a few moments. You got another nice function I'd like to share with you. The take function. The take function is just that. It allows me to take records from the beginning of the data set or the end of the data set as a nice sampling. So we'll select our data set, and you'll notice I've selected A2 through E114 using the take function. And then I'm going to tell it to take the top 5 rows. And that's exactly what it does. It takes the top 5 rows from the data set. Not the top based on some kind of ranking, literally the physical top records. And if I change that take to a -5, I get the bottom 5 records of the data set. It's a simple formula, which is very useful when you're just want to get a quick sampling of your data. So you can say, give me the first 50 cells or the first 500. One final cool formula to share with you. It's called split. Now, most of us use the text to columns to split our data, but we saw that earlier, but there's a nice function that I think you're going to really appreciate called split. The formula reads like this: equals split. And if you notice when I was typing in split, it says, no, Tom, that's not right. It's text split. And I'd like to split this text here. There goes that escape key again. Text split. I'd like to look at this text here and tell it the comma is my delimiter. And when I hit the enter key now, the question is it going to interpret my data and screw it up, or is it going to read it as it is? Let's copy that formula down. And who's excited? Ready? Drum roll. It interprets the data as it is. It does not try to make it something that it's not. So let me share this formula with you again. It's one of those array formulas that we shared with you earlier. You've got to love the text split. Give me a rating on your love of text split from 0 to 10. 0 meaning that was junk. 10 meaning that was amazing. Yeah. Oh, wow. 10,000, 100,000. That's a great tool. And I'd copy that into the chat. And for your sake, I'm going to take this and put this file into the chat. Now, I've already done the text split on it. I apologize, but it'll give you a good reminder. Now, interesting enough, some of you are actual real rocket scientists. Others are maybe like me, wannabe scientists. When it comes to data analysis, oftentimes we're faced with a problem of regression analysis. And some of us are like, I know what regression analysis is all about, but I have to look it up every single time. I don't remember the formulas. I don't remember the process to produce a nice regression analysis as we have here. So I'd like to share with you a really cool built-in tool to Microsoft Excel that will help you get to your R-squared or your slope or your intercept for your regression analysis. And we're going to make it really fast and really easy using Microsoft's built-in add-in tool. You'll notice on my screen, on my data tab, you may be jealous that I've got a data analysis choice on my data tab. If you go to your data tab, if you don't have the data analysis option in the groupings, you'll have it in just a moment. To get to that data analysis choice, which will allow us to use all kinds of really cool data analysis built-in tools, including regression, we would have to first go to the File menu and choose Options. When you go to File and Options, you'll notice down at the bottom left of our list of choices, we have the add-ins. And down here, we have the Manage Our Excel add-ins. It just so happens that the analysis tool pack that I'm drawing your attention to is one of the Excel add-ins. So all you have to do is hit Go. And when you hit Go, you can then turn on any of the Excel add-ins that are available. And right now, I believe I have 4 available to me. There it is. I just closed it. Impatience, Tom. Waited 1 more millisecond and it would have been fine. I don't know if any of you are as impatient as I, but we'll wait this time. And if you turn on the analysis tool pack and hit the OK, you'll then be able to see the data analysis choice on the data tab. Coming over now. Thinking, thinking, thinking. And there it is. And you can see the analysis tool pack shows up. I can check mark it and make it available to me, and then it will show up on my data tab. Let me share with you the data analysis, particularly with the regression analysis. We'll choose the regression add-in. We'll hit the OK. And now it says, Tom, what's your Y input? My Y input is my results. And my X input will be my sample size. And then it says, Tom, are you including labels? No, I did not include my labels. And I want to output that to this cell right here. And I've also would like to, well, I'm not going to play with these right now. So let's do the residuals. We'll click on the OK, and you'll notice the regression analysis is generated automatically for me. And I don't have to remember all those formulas that I'm about to share with you anyhow. If you wanted to produce the most common regression analysis variables, which is your R squared, slope, and intercept, of course, you can always find the correlation function. It's pronounced correlation, but it's abbreviated as coral. And it says, okay, Tom, what is your range, your array 1? And what is your array 2? And then finally, once I put in my second array, hold on. My screen just went blank. I knew there was a problem. Did my computer just freeze? I think my computer just froze.
I can still see your screen, but yeah, it looks frozen.
I can't see my own screen.
I don't know.
Oh boy. Yeah, my computer just froze. I think my there you go. I can't see my own screen to continue here. So I apologize for that. We'll give it like one more minute. And if it doesn't come together, we'll say, oh, there it is. It just came back. And it just did a little to catch up. Thank you, Zoom. I think Zoom's having some issues right now. But yes, everybody can still see my screen? Okay, good. We'll go ahead and do the correlation. I guess it just didn't like the correlation function. We'll select our array 1, our X array, and our Y range. And then you'll notice the correlation function matches the function here in the results. So you can do it manually if you'd like. Let's go ahead and do slope manually as well. But why bother when Excel has its own built-in regression analysis tool? Well, you all know why we bother, right? Because we like doing it ourselves. We like being in control. But we can create our own formulas such as correlation, slope, and of course there's intercept. I'm no mathematician or statistician, but through my research, I found that these are 3 of the most common tools we use in regression analysis. So let's go ahead and do the intercept finally. And again, our known Y's and our known X's, and all of these values you'll see over there in that automatic regression analysis on the far right side of my screen. Let's go to the chat. I'm curious from all of you. Have you found that you have access to your Excel add-ins, specifically the data analysis tool pack? It's actually called the analysis tool pack. Mark, you found it? You've been using it, or did you just find it just now? Sorry, that was a bad question. It is available to you, Mark. Great. And you've been using it. Thank you for clarifying. Well, finally, how about we wrap this up with some charting? Microsoft Excel has some amazing charting tools, and that it's not quite the same animal as, say, MATLAB or some of the other advanced analysis tools that you scientists have available to you. But it is the tool that most of us have available, Microsoft Excel. So I don't want to say we make do, but we make do with what we have. And Excel, fortunately, gives us a lot of great choices. I'd like to chart this with a scatter plot. And to build a scatter plot, simply arrange the numbers in a vertical fashion like this and select the 2 columns if that's what you're looking for. And we choose the insert, and finally over here we have charts. Of course, you can go over here to the recommended charts, which is great, but I think I know what I want. I need a scatter chart, a scatter plot, and I'm going to go ahead and choose this particular plot. To add a trend line into this plot to see the distribution of my data, I'm going to go ahead and right click on any one of the data points and choose add trend line. And you notice how easily Microsoft Excel adds that trend line. Now, the way this chart is organized is it's nice enough, but I'd like to be able to add more data to this chart. As time goes on, of course, I'm going to need more data. So I'm going to, let's slide this on down. We have more data. I'm just going to go ahead and copy a sampling here so I don't have to type. But you notice how Excel did not pick up on that new data on my chart. And I've noticed in my years of working with people in Microsoft Excel, they have a tendency to click on the chart and go up to the chart design and choose select data and putz around in this dialog box trying to figure it out. Have you ever had that experience? It's pretty clear once you've used it before, but it can be, thank you, it can be a little confusing. When your chart is a simple out of the box scatter plot like this one, you'll notice when we select that chart, we get some selectable ranges over here with small little handles to grab for expanding our range. If I were to grab this handle and drag it on down, you notice I've expanded my chart and expanded my data set into that chart. It's really that easy, friends. You just drag and drop. But you might be thinking, Tom, this is not very helpful because, well, my data is separated. I can't see this. Well, you notice we can actually drag these panels to different data sets. So we have our results 1, and we can actually have our results 2 over in this column. And you have to admit that that's a pretty darn cool feature to be able to pinpoint where we want our data to come from by simply dragging, and I'm using my speed typing friends, by simply dragging the selectors to a different set of cells. I find this to be very useful and also super easy to adjust our results for the boss or the client's every whim. They say, can you show it like this? And can you show it like that? Well, the answer is yes, it can. Finally, I've got one more minute to share with you something pretty amazing. Okay, thanks a lot, Julia. This is something that you're going to find spectacular in the next little bit. And it's going to take me 1 minute to explain what is so spectacular about this and 1 minute to demonstrate it. Did you know that Microsoft Excel, every cell in Excel can hold more than one value? We call them scenarios. If I had a scenario where these are my results, most likely, we have another set of data that it might correlate to, or maybe a best case or worst case scenario. We can create scenarios by using the data tab and going to the what if analysis and choosing the scenario manager. Now with the scenario manager, I can add a scenario, and I'm going to call this scenario the most likely scenario. Clicking the OK and validating that I've got my data where I want it, I can now create another scenario based on maybe worst case. We'll go ahead and create that scenario by selecting the same range. Go to the what if analysis and choose the scenario manager. And we'll add another scenario. We'll call this the best case. Now, the beauty of this, friends, is we can switch between scenarios by simply going to the what if analysis, scenario manager, choosing the scenario in question, like best case, and clicking on show. And all my numbers will now show those. And if I choose again the next case, which would be the most likely, and show, you notice my data will show, and all the formulas correspondingly change as well. So no more do you need to create multiple sheets to store multiple scenarios. You can store multiple scenarios on one sheet because Microsoft Excel, every single cell in Microsoft Excel can store more than one value. This has been fun, everybody. We got through all the material. I'm so excited. I thought maybe I had overdone it on preparing, but we got through all the material and I didn't feel rushed. Maybe you felt a little rushed. So you can stick around and ask questions and maybe pick the brain of myself and Josh. We're both self-proclaimed Excel gurus. and we'd love to have you stick around. It's been a pleasure working with you. Look forward to getting a copy of the files, as well as a thank you email and a takeaway card and a link to this video. So on behalf of Gravity Learning, and my name is Tom, thanks for joining me for an hour of fun and Excel excitement. Stick around if you'd like.